Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, anger and healthcare, a wide-ranging and personal conversation with health insurance executive Mark Bertolini.
The provision of healthcare, the actual investment in people's health, has changed dramatically, while the insurance industry hasn't, and the way we buy healthcare hasn't.
He led Aetna and now leads Oscar Health, and he's got a vision for an improved American health system.
What would you do?
What I would do is I would eliminate employer-sponsored insurance.
You say that, and it stops my heart a little bit.
How Bertolini views his own security in the wake of the UnitedHealthcare CEO murder, and how his own chronic pain wore him down for 18 years.
I just couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted.
That important conversation today. Plus, in the markets, Tesla's helping nudge Elon Musk toward a milestone.
He will be a trillion.
It could be. He could be the first.
And one New Jersey congressman was born to run, so he says.
Springsteen it kind of crosses party lines.
It's Thursday, December 12th, 2024. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Tesla climbing now to a record high during yesterday's session, rising by nearly 6%. The stock now up 70% since Donald Trump won the November election. You're looking at 426.35 right now. Yesterday's move lifting it above its previous closing high from November of 2021. And the move in Tesla was lucrative, as you'd imagine, for Elon Musk, and also coincided with a big jump in valuation for SpaceX this week. Bloomberg estimating his net worth right now surging above $400 billion. It's almost surreal, with a one-day gain of $62.8 billion. As of yesterday's close, his fortune's estimated at $447 billion.
It's hard to even think of that.
When a lot of it has to do with equity, people, I mean, that doubles. That's not ridiculous that it could double in the next 5 years, and he will.
No, it's not.
He will be a trillion.
It could be. He could be the first.
His money now, I think, even on an adjusted basis, is more than Rockefeller or Carnegie or anyone would have.
Even adjusted for.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's any other trillionaire, unless some of the aliens flying the drones. Some of them might be
The ones in Jersey, over Jersey.
Theoretically, I don't know whether they're pretty nice drones.
Yeah. Well, we've always said
on this planet, no one's worth a trillion.
Well, we've always said that
Putin.
Had Bill Gates held on to all of his shares,
he would. Yeah.
He would be a trillionaire today. Remarkably, yeah.
That is remarkable. President-elect Trump has invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend his inauguration next month. This is according to a CBS report citing multiple sources. I saw it yesterday. It's not clear, though, whether Xi accepted the invitation, and the report says inauguration officials are making plans for additional foreign dignitaries to attend. Meantime, there's this. President-elect Trump is scheduled to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange this morning, and an Associated Press report, we kind of figured this, says he was in a finalist. Who else would it be? Was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Time declined to confirm the selection ahead of this morning's announcement.
I think the cat's out of the bag on that story.
I think so. And it's I guess it's the one time we might say the word Time in reference to the magazine per year, where there might actually have a scintilla of relevance.
We talk about them sometime with their most influential lists, their 100 most influential.
Maybe, I guess, their lists. It's sad. That's what they've been relegated to. Used to be a real news
magazine industry has been
very difficult.
Tough business.
It is.
As our newspapers, as our television.
I wonder what picture they use. Will they use? Maybe they'll get a picture of him with ringing the bell. I don't know.
I was wondering if it would be the, after he was shot with a bullet. Fight.
Yeah.
Fight shot.
Yeah. That's so iconic.
Right.
Maybe so. I did try and get him on today.
Good.
I spoke to him, and he, I don't know, said stop by. I mean, you're coming from Trump Tower.
It's on the way.
You could stop by here. Because I got a car full of people. It would be the Secret Service. that's a loaded term now. They'd probably, oh yeah, go ahead, don't worry. No, but
Well, Mr. President, if you're watching and you happen to want to stop by, just drop by.
You're probably going
We'd
down
love to have you.
7th, aren't you?
I think he's probably go down 5th.
5th, I would think, yeah.
5th from Trump Tower.
But you can cut over, Mr. President, you can cut over on
there's
43rd.
wooden streets here.
And we've got food.
I think they clear the
We
way
do?
for 'em. We
You know,
do?
I'm
No,
sure
we
we'll
don't.
get some. I know we could get
don't
some.
have food.
We do have some food out there.
No, we don't.
Isn't that anything good?
No, there's nothing in
You know
there.
what we should get? Some sausage and egg McMuffins.
You think that would?
For him and me.
Okay. The U.S. Appeals Court now ruling that NASDAQ could not impose rules designed to increase diversity in corporate America by requiring listed companies to have women and minority directors on their boards or explain why they don't. Now, it's an interesting ruling. It was 9-8. It was a New Orleans-based appeals court found that the rules approved by the SEC ran afoul of federal securities laws. The SEC said it's reviewing the decision. NASDAQ said that it believed its rules would benefit companies and investors, but that it respected the court's decision and interestingly said they would not appeal. And we've talked to Adina Friedman a lot about the original decision. Of course, the original decision was aimed at requiring disclosure about the diversity of the board. You didn't have to do anything in particular, but if you didn't have a diverse board, if you will, you had to disclose and explain to some degree why and what was happening. And of course, this all came in the aftermath. I don't know if it was in the aftermath but this was back in sort of the 2020 era when ESG and a lot of the things we've talked about, and now there's a sort of obviously big backlash to have come back.
There was backlash from a lot of companies who were irritated by this, and when there was talk of the Texas setup of a competing exchange in Texas, there were companies who were saying, look, we're tired of getting harassed about this. We're tired of the expectations on this. And the idea of a competing exchange in Texas was one that a lot of companies internally were talking about as a real
I remember we had a
alternative.
conversation with her in Davos. I think we also had a conversation with David Solomon. Remember, they had made efforts to diversify their board. I mean, there has been this move afoot, but clearly the move is going the opposite direction now.
I thought we're going to talk about New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer. I thought he was going to tell us what was going on with the drones.
Well, we should try that too.
I really did. But he admitted yesterday that he faked his Spotify Wrapped list that he shared online. The list summarizes each user's top played songs for the year. Gottheimer posted a list that made it appear that his most played songs were all by Bruce Springsteen. But online sleuths pointed out that the font, the numerals, and the spacing looked a little bit off. Gottheimer, paraphrasing Springsteen, said he created the list for fun. So just relax. He said he shares an account with his children, and the playlist he posted was a reflection of what his would look like if he did have an individual account. Gottheimer is running for governor.
I'm glad that got cleared up. This was big news.
The funny thing is he then posted his actual one, and it had Drake, it had Taylor Swift in the top 5. He said, yeah, those are my kids.
I don't know. I'm like my father.
My bigger Spotify problem, I don't know if you share your Spotify account with family, and we have a family account, but sometimes if you ever have it where you're playing it somewhere, and then all of a sudden it stops, I think some of our viewers will understand what's going on because they're playing it somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
And then you're having a competition with them.
I do that with Matt. I keep trying to override.
You press play to override them, and then they're trying to override you. That's why you do need the family account, because you can't, technically, if they're under their own account name, it should be fine. But of course,
I do this with Matt, where it's like, no, I'm not listening to heavy metal.
Right.
We're listening to this.
I've switched around so much, and I have favorites on SiriusXM, and I'm tired of it, and I have settled on just Real Jazz. It's called Real Jazz. I think it's 67. And you can leave it on forever. But people that are riding with me are like,
loser. So apparently on Gottheimer's account, the boss was in the top spot. It was followed by Billy Joel, Drake, Travis Scott, and Taylor Swift. He's like, yeah, Drake, Travis Scott, Taylor Swift, those are my kids, basically what he was saying.
I think that'd be my bottom spot. I know I live in New Jersey, but that's just me. Miles would be my top spot.
Springsteen, it kind of crosses party lines.
I'm not saying it has anything to do with party. I just never I remember, he was on the cover of Newsweek and Time back in the 70s the same week. It was weird. I said,
was that with the
guy?
bandana in the back pocket when he was on the?
Yeah, I guess so. It was after Born to Run. That's like, I'm not a fan, but whatever.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers are threatening to break up some of the nation's biggest healthcare conglomerates, including UnitedHealth and CVS Health. A new bill introduced yesterday by prominent Republican and Democratic lawmakers would prohibit companies that own drug middlemen or health insurers from owning pharmacy businesses. So that means the pharmacy benefit managers would not be allowed to be owned by pharmacy companies. That bill is co-sponsored by Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren and Republican Senator Josh Hawley. There is a companion bill that's being introduced in the House, but again, this is the right and the left teaming up to go after what we'd been anticipating could be a problem, the PBMs. That was something that President Trump mentioned in his interview with Meet the Press just this past weekend as being an area that they would be looking into as well. We're going to be talking to Mark Bertolini. He served as Aetna CEO until that insurer was acquired by CVS. He's now the CEO of Oscar Health, which is a much smaller insurance company. We're going to talk to him about what he's seen over the years, what he thinks might be done, where the problems are, and how you deal with the public furor that has broken out after UnitedHealth and the killing of that CEO.
It does kind of seem like there should be an arm's length between the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the PBMs, doesn't it?
Well, this is the pharmacies and the PBMs. And the PBMs will blame the drug companies. The drug companies blame the PBMs. Everybody blames the hospitals, and everyone involved blames the insurance companies. It's a pretty tangled and complicated system. There's not an easy answer. We're not going to get an answer with Mark Bertolini in the 10 or 15 minutes that we get to talk to him about, but he has some deep insights.
He does, and some what would be wrenching. This is like that the employer. Funded
I'd have to tell you,
insurance.
I hate his thing that he's.
I know the employer-funded model is
broken,
is anachronistic and can't work. But we all sort of count on. You'd have to. I don't do things by myself. You'd have to be a self-starter and know exactly how to do it individually, so that your plan,
like
whenever
everybody
you
dealing
move,
with Medicare
it goes with you. And you know, Robert Johnson wants that for retirement plans. We employer-funded. Parts of your life have been a part of what we do.
Although the issue is employer-funded healthcare has tended to be better healthcare because you have the bulk of an employer who can go and negotiate on a bulk basis for you.
Or if you're not employed.
If you're not employed, it's in a very difficult position.
Or if you switch jobs, then it doesn't travel.
Well, look, we get our insurance changed here pretty regularly. We're going to be joining UnitedHealthcare from Blue Cross Blue Shield come January at this company. So just being at an employer-sponsored healthcare does not keep you in the same plan for forever either. But I think there is some advantage to having an employer who has a lot of employees negotiating for you rather than trying to navigate it by yourself. And this takes me back to Obamacare, where they said if you like your plan, you can keep it. Or not.
True. Yeah.
We'll get into this. Mark's got some really deep insights into this. He's going to put his finger on some of the problems. As you're an individual trying to navigate this system, it's incredibly complicated.
Bertolini has so many fixes to Obamacare that it's almost a repeal and replace. It's not quite, but there's so many things that need to be different.
Send him into the White House with Trump, and they can figure it out together.
Figure out how to do it.
Cheese will be next.
Up next on Squawk Pod, a candid, wide-ranging discussion with veteran health insurance executive Mark Bertolini. His take on his personal security, his ideas to improve our complicated Byzantine insurance system, and how he managed nearly 2 decades of chronic pain.
I was like, wait, 18 years and it was my brain all this time?
His physical and mental battles to change his life.
Now I'm pain-free a year and a half later.
And the care that finally helped.
The right side of my brain now works. I have empathy. I cry at stupid dog movies.
That conversation right after this break.
Springsteen it kind of crosses party lines.
This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
Earlier this week, an Ivy League-educated man in his mid-20s became the prime suspect in the murder of a healthcare executive last week. In the aftermath of the killing, there's been an outpouring of much anger that's been targeted at the healthcare industry and at corporate America, making many wonder if this incident could change the way the healthcare insurance industry operates. Joining us right now with his expert insights is Mark Bertolini. He's the CEO of Oscar Health. He's also the former chairman and CEO of Aetna, among a lot of other different positions that he's held in the healthcare industry. And Mark, I want to thank you very much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Becky.
You are somebody who has so many insights into how the healthcare industry works. And I know you've got some big thoughts about what should change. You've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yep.
We've talked to you for many years about these things. But obviously, there's a huge amount of attention that's being put on this in the public and in Washington. And there might be a real opportunity for change. Just wonder, first of all, what you think about what you've been hearing back from the public and the anger over denials and where we stand at this point. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to this point.
Well, I think the anger is justified. You can't talk to anyone in this city and not get a story about a claim denial or a prior authorization. I was just talking with some of the people outside, getting the right drugs, whatever. And I think what's happened is the provision of healthcare, the actual investment in people's health, has changed dramatically, while the insurance industry hasn't, and the way we buy healthcare hasn't. 80 years ago, we created this employer-sponsored system because we were trying to offset inflation, so no wage increases, but we could offer benefits. At the same time, there was this expected population explosion, and then we had the Hill-Burton Act in the 50s that built hospitals everywhere. And so we created both demand and supply increases that have not slowed since. The population boom happened and all of this costs. I mean, if you look at the percentage of GDP going to healthcare, it's now just under 20%. And in 1984, it was 9%. So as you look at these changes over time, we've just outrun our ability to afford the way we do it.
There are questions about whether we get appropriate outcomes for the amount that we are spending on it. I would argue that since 1984, healthcare has gotten better for the vast majority of Americans, but it still falls short and falls short of expectations when you're talking about spending 20% of GDP.
And life expectancy's gone down.
Yeah.
Is it lifestyle, or is it? I mean, the healthcare is better, and we have the best. We have the best
Right.
technology and healthcare in the world. But if we're gonna, if 50% of the population is going to be obese, it's you're running into a buzzsaw. You can't. There's no healthcare that is going to be great enough to handle the lifestyle problem.
Your zip code matters more than your genetic code in your health. So how you live and where you live actually matters. And so we have huge issues in rural communities around the country. But probably the most important thing is that healthcare has now become very individualistic. I want it to be fit for me. And when my employer buys my healthcare coverage, they buy for the average.
Right. So what would you do? I mean, look, Elon Musk was out there just earlier this week. We were talking about it yesterday, suggesting that the answer is if we could get a huge percentage of Americans on GLP-1s, we could bring the cost down of healthcare in a remarkable way, especially if you could get the price of GLP-1s to come down in a remarkable way. What would you do?
What I would do is I would eliminate employer-sponsored insurance.
You say that, and it stops my heart a little bit, because those of us who have employer health care think, oh my gosh, getting thrown in so everybody's dealing with Medicare Advantage, that seems like a pretty terrible thing. And I would argue that my health care insurance, while I'm not always thrilled with it, at least I have an employer who can go and argue for the mass of us. There's a lot of us, and that at least has some bulk. If I'm out there on my own, it feels like there wouldn't be any protection that comes with it.
The ability of your employer to negotiate against a large insurance company that has much a larger relationship with the provider community is very stinted now. You can't get stunted. You can't do it now.
And you're saying the companies have no leverage?
The companies have no leverage now.
Interesting.
And you look at the basic foundation of our economy, which is small business and middle market, they have none. And they're seeing double-digit rate increases when just over in the individual market, our trend's been 3.5% each year. Why?
Do the claims get turned down more readily in the individual market
No.
than they do? So it's the same.
Our denial rate's less than it's 12% is our denial rate.
UnitedHealthcare, I'd seen 23 to 33%.
Yep, and the only one that's lower than we are is Kaiser, because they don't do it. And Kaiser doesn't do it because the physicians are taught to practice in a certain way with one another.
Right.
So they know how to refer within the system and to the right people.
But here's what we hear. We hear things like AI systems being put in place at UnitedHealthcare that are turning down claims and overruling doctors that are requesting it. I've heard Aetna, where you used to be the CEO, that there were health claims officials who testified that, we denied people's requests without even seeing their medical records at times. I mean, it's that much of a system where doctors will complain that they have to hire multiple people just to sit online to get through to insurance companies to then be turned in.
What we've known for more than 20 years in the insurance industry is that the large majority of prior authorizations that we do always get done anyway. But yet we make everybody go through the hoops. And the reason is again, employers buy for the average of their employee population. They buy large networks because their employees use a lot of providers. And as a result, the ability to negotiate a better rate with that provider group is a lot less because you got everybody in. But when you get narrow networks, which is what's happening in the individual market, and you have everybody in, an individual can find their network. They don't have to rely on their employer to build the network.
Does it mean that as an individual, if I'm really healthy and young, I can get a much better premium, but if I'm somebody who has a family and is using the healthcare system, I'm going to be paying a lot more?
So here's how you have to think about it. You have to think about the employer giving to employees what they've traditionally given them for benefits. It's defined contribution instead of defined benefit. You allow that employee with some assistance to understand what's going on in their use of healthcare to get them into the right plan.
Right. But here's the question that I'm worried about.
Yep.
I'm worried that unfortunately parts of this country are not necessarily fully financially literate. This is a very complex Byzantine situation. I was telling Joe just yesterday that I broke my toe. I broke my pinky toe, which I don't think should be that big a deal. You should be able to just wrap it and that should be the end of it, but it hasn't gotten better. So I went to a doctor. That was a couple $100. Then they said, well, you got to go get an x-ray. That's a couple $100. Then they wanted to get something called an exogen machine. That's like $4,000. And they want you to come back. And this is for the pinky toe that I can
just chop it off.
Maybe. But my only point
Keep
is,
it wrapped.
But my only point is the whole thing is a little bit of a crazy situation.
Yes.
And I'm able to do that and blessed to afford to be able to go back and forth. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it, frankly.
Yeah.
But I don't know if everybody out there is going to do it the right way and is going to figure out how they're supposed to handle their own health care.
So everybody is doing it individually when they're with their doctor, not when they buy their health plan. But when you buy your health plan in the individual market, 94% of the people that choose a plan choose it with a broker who sits down with them and talks about them what they need. And when that happens, you now get a plan that works for you versus getting the employer's average plan, which in a lot of cases may make you overinsured. You're paying for more than you're actually getting.
Well, but what you're talking about is if you need insurance, you're going to pay a ton of money. If you don't need any insurance, you're not going to pay a lot. And that is a little frightening because you don't know when you might end up in the position to need it.
A large number of people that have zero premium plans with us have a silver base plan, which is a good plan in the ACA, and they hardly ever use it. And why do they buy it? They buy it so they don't lose the house if they get in an accident or they get really hurt. So people have different needs for insurance. And so what we need to do is we need to allow that greater freedom of choice. Our most sought after plan in Oscar is a plan for diabetics, because we actually bring them in, get them into care, and get them under control. And they end up in a better place.
You've talked about that when you were at Aetna too, trying to do preventative care to help keep people from the big things. I guess, you know, when I think about healthcare insurance, I think about people who have paid in their whole life, think they're getting insurance, they finally put in a claim for cancer or something else, and they get denied. And what you're talking about sounds like, okay, you're going to be paying very high premiums if you ever use us. If you don't use us, you're fine. But that sounds like what people are mad about right now.
No, you don't pay very high premiums. When you're in the largest risk pool in America today is the ACA. It's 23 million lives.
Right.
It's the most stable risk pool in America because what we do at the end of the year is we actually level the risk across all the plans We're a net payer at Oscar. We pay over $1 billion into the pool every year because other payers have negative numbers. And so we level it all out so we're all at the same place from the standpoint of risk adjustment. It's not like Medicare where everybody's competing on their own for risk adjustment. We level it out. And at the end, that creates stability in pricing and stability in trend.
Two issues. First of all, the pharmacy benefits managers are under attack in Washington. You saw this legislation that Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley have put together. This is the right and the left, a Republican and a Democrat, saying they should not be allowed to be owned by a company that also owns a pharmacy company, that they want to break things down. I mean, you sold Aetna into CVS, and part of that buildup was a huge part of consolidation. What do you think about consolidation at this point? What do you think about being too big? What do you think about the pharmacy benefits managers?
Yeah. So the first thing, being too big is not working in healthcare because it's hard to make change, both on the provider side and on the health insurance side. I mean, at United, for example, or any of the big carriers, they have the C team on their ACA plans. We have the A team because this is all we do. And so when you look at focus and attention and making sure you're doing the right thing for the end consumer, and that's why we have an NPS of 66 and the industry average is at 0, we get better retention, almost 20 points higher than the rest of the industry in the ACA. And we get a lot of growth because people want what we have to offer. And so we have to tailor, in a world where people want personalized care, we need to have personalized benefits.
So you think more competition is the answer to that?
Absolutely.
We need much more transparency. And we hear this all the time when we talk about healthcare. I still don't know where I'm going to get the best price for an x-ray or for whatever diagnostics I get sent out for. It can be simple. Just show us, make it very easy to see the denial rates for insurance companies when people are shopping. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good idea?
I think we should all report that.
It should be very clear.
Do you believe that you could get legislation that would require that? Do you think the industry would take that on its own?
Well, here's a problem with the AI agenda of most insurance companies. The databases are so strewn all over the place and there's no version of the truth. It's really hard for them to do a lot with AI. They talk about it, but they don't. And at Oscar, we do a lot of our work on the back end of the business where it's administrative, not clinical, but administrative. Last year, we reduced our operating costs by 800 basis points in 1 year using large language models because we have one database, one version of the truth. So we can use it to good effect on the administrative side.
Meaning what? What does that mean? What did you find when you started putting large language models to work on that database?
So, for example, fraud, waste, and abuse. Right? 7% in Florida of claims paid.
Finding that fraud, waste, and abuse coming from the doctors or coming from the patients who are putting this in?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Yep.
How did you identify it with the large language models?
There has been, since Medicare started, 1967, I had the first check at Aetna sitting on the wall because Aetna was the first financial intermediary for Medicare. We started a strategic investigation unit that went after fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicare, where everybody in the industry shared all the potential cheats that were going on in the system. Got down to things like what system are they billing from, what time of day do they bill, all those sorts of things.
Wow.
And we shared it with one another. We don't do that anywhere else other than Medicare. We should be doing it everywhere else.
That's really smart.
But a lot of us are pulling that into our non-Medicare operations to do it in a way we can drive that cost. We used to have to pay vendors $30 million a year to help us do that. We can replace that with a large language model when we've done it enough and we've got the database. But our database is singular, it only has one version. Other databases are multiple in these institutions that have merged.
Just big old companies?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for them to make change. And some of them have 30 different systems. Yeah. So what we have to do is consolidation has not worked well, number one. Number two, we're not doing an individual approach and a good member experience for anybody in large organizations that average by the big numbers.
Mark, I want to ask you on a personal level.
Yeah.
I've known you for more than 15 years. The entire time that I've known you, you've suffered with chronic pain from a skiing accident that you had more than 18 years ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago at this
last
point.
February, yeah.
Okay, so tell me about how you found out how to handle chronic pain and how you are living now.
So I broke 5 of my vertebrae in my neck. I had severe chronic pain, level 7 to 10, 24/7, slept an hour a night for 18 years. And I had decided that I was going to end my life in Switzerland. So
last year, in February of last year.
2023, yep. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted. So as I was going through the process, I had to prove I had intractable pain, and I went and saw a doctor, Howard Schubner, and another gentleman named Alan Gordon out in California, who wrote this book called The Way Out. And he sent me the book, and I read it because he saw me speak, and he said, just call me. And we finally connected. And what they showed is that, and this is, I'll use a baseball analogy, baseball hitters, when they look at their brain, the best baseball hitters, their visual, cognitive, and motor cortex lights up instantaneously. There's no latency. In people with chronic pain, the 42 pain centers in their brain light up instantly when they just get touched with anything. And so they always have chronic pain, and that's what I had. I had a neuroplasticity. I taught my brain how to sense everything as pain. So what we needed to do is we needed to help me understand that, which pissed me off in the beginning, to tell you the truth. I was like, wait, 18 years and it was my brain all this time? And then when they disconnected it with transcranial magnetic stimulation, put me in virtual reality to re-educate it, and now I'm pain-free a year and a half later.
And everything in your life has changed.
It's changed. The right side of my brain now works. I have empathy. I cry at stupid dog movies. I mean, all these sorts of things where didn't have it before. I was a machine.
You're back in the gym.
I'm back in the gym.
Working out. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Because you told me this is $1 trillion a year that people use to deal with chronic.
We're building a company around it. We're out for funding right now. We want to take it. We want to take it out. We're not going to take it public. We want to roll it out as soon as we have the funding set, which should be in the first quarter of next year.
You're funding a lot of it yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm now starting to get other people from other PEs who are saying, Bertolini, you can't have that all on your own. You have to give me some of that, because it's so profound. It's a $1.5 trillion a year problem. Right. Chronic pain.
Let me ask you a different question.
Yeah.
About the murder of Brian Thompson.
Yes.
I was saying before you sat down that the conversation we're having now is an important conversation.
Yes.
About healthcare. It upsets me that we're having it in the context of it being inspired to some degree by a murder.
Absolutely. Unconscionable.
It's unconscionable. And I wish in many ways we weren't having this conversation now.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd like to have it in a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah.
Because I would desperately want to separate these things, because what I really don't want to have happen is there to be copycat situations around other industries. There is lots to complain about and lots of things that need to get fixed in this country, but I desperately don't want them to get fixed on the basis of violence. And so,
totally agree.
But I am curious, as somebody who's in this industry, just how you're processing what happened, and what your colleagues and peers and others in the business are even saying about all of this.
Well, when I was at Aetna, I was a high-profile person, and I had two people on me all the time. I hated it. Nothing was private about my life. There were cameras watching my house and me and everything else going on. So when I retired, I was like, woohoo! I can go on the subway. I can go in the park with the dog. I don't have to worry about myself being somebody else. Now, people still think I'm the CEO of Aetna for reasons I don't understand, but they still think it is. And so there's always I get these letters from people. I say, I'm sorry, I haven't been there for 5 years, 6 years. I can't help you. And then they move on. But now what's happening, and I have security again, and I hate it. I don't want to be tied down like that, but it's important for, the company believes it's important because for the company, but they also believe it's important for me personally. But I think you're right. I think this is not the way that we should be acting as Americans.
Right. Mark, do you think, it also put a focus just on profit incentive in maybe, and there are certain things where there can't be run with a profit incentive, like a fire department or the police department. Yeah. Is there enough historical precedent for you to say that some type of profit incentive, even in the healthcare system, is necessary to stimulate innovation and minding your P's and Q's, and that a not-for-profit, government-run, we're going to have whatever you need, we're going to give you, and we're going to just tax people to pay for whatever it is you need and not really watch it. Can you lay to rest the notion there should be a healthcare system that doesn't involve profits at all?
Every one well-run organization, for-profit or not-for-profit, needs to generate a margin in order to sustain its business. We don't take our profit, and this is the part that most Americans don't understand. There are two economic systems. There are shareholders, and then there are the companies. We don't take our money and give it to the shareholders at the end of the year. We put it back in the business to support growth and better services and all those other sorts of things.
But the whole notion of the capitalistic system is based on the profit incentive, and that's questioned when it's questioned by a large swath of the population.
While I was at Aetna, we had a 652% total shareholder return as a CEO.
Yeah.
2/3 of it was the PE, Joe. And why is that? Because people believed in the credibility of our story and our ability to grow the company responsibly and continue to have people want our services. And
would the government be more efficient if it had to actually show a break even on everything it did? Don't you think it would? If there's no accountability, you get the DMV. That's what you get.
I was in a conversation with a bunch of investors over whether or not the enhanced subsidies are going to stay, and they were doing 10-year non-adjusted math with poor. I said, you guys must be from the CBO.
Right.
Because that's the way they do math.
You've always said no money, no mission.
Right.
When you're doing charitable
No
work
margin,
too.
no mission. Yeah.
Right.
Sister Joyce DeShano, the chairwoman of Ascension Health System, said it to me first. She gave me the phrase, a nun, and said, Mark, we understand no margin, no mission. We have to be able to reinvest in our mission.
Yeah. Mark Bertolini. Mark, thank you for this extensive conversation. We'd love to have you back to talk a lot more about the new venture that you're undertaking, too.
Great.
I think there's going to be a huge amount of interest in it, and we really appreciate seeing you.
Thanks so much.
That does it for Squawk Pod today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern and get the best of our show directly into your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.